Students, now let's look at Unit 2, which discusses types of research. So it's actually an introduction to why we do research and what are the methods and what is the pathways to doing research in the area of media and communication. Media and the sector itself is becoming so complex, and also because media cannot really be seen in isolation. It has to be seen in the context of current cultural practices, the norms, the economic, the political culture, and the current situation in which we are living today. All of it gets impacted by media. So there are three different ways of doing it. First is to define what is our research approach. How are we going to really look at things which are provided to us, as we call it in scientific perspective, is phenomena. What phenomena are we going to study, and for that what kind of a method or approach we are going to employ. Second is the results that accrue to us through this pursuit of knowledge, is whether it has what kind of different application dimensions it has. And the third is what is the purpose of our study, because that will define the kind of method or design we will employ in undertaking a research. Now you can look at this entire area of scrutiny in this figure, which talks about, I've tried to present it to you in a very giving you an overview, which is looking at research approach, which comprises of different methods. Now let's begin with the first inquiry mode approach. So inquiry mode approach comprises of three ways of looking at things. Of course, in any research we have to collect data, we have to analyze, and we have to actually interpret the data and come up with some kind of findings. But research studies can also be classified into three types. That is our approach to the area of inquiry. One is to look at it qualitative, as I mentioned earlier, quantitative and mixed methods research. Let's look at it in a more detailed way. So when we talk of qualitative research, it employs different kinds of tools. For example, it talks in terms of that when we talk to people, to our respondents, to our subjects, we do actually employ in-depth interviews. We use focus group discussion, we use observation, we use transect walk and ethnographic observations. But when you look at quantitative methodology, then we actually have to derive a lot of significant numerical data, for which we employ more survey-based interviews with people, which is like a questionnaire or like a schedule. So it can be a telephone surveys, which are not very common in India, but we have face-to-face household-based surveys, interviews, and we also have web-based questionnaires. Let me give you a little more understanding about all the three one by one. One is to look at qualitative research is an inductive approach. Any social phenomena examined through observations and interpretation of people's views and experiences is taken under the qualitative research, because it actually explains different set of questions which any researcher can ask. For example, why things are the way they are. So it explains to you, it gives you a more in-depth understanding of different facts about any phenomena, and this data is collected in non-numerical form through observation and in-depth interviews with individuals, groups in their natural settings. And most of the ways that we ask people about any kind of practice, any kind of their attitude, is done in a very open way, and we generally call it as open-ended and not pre-arranged questions. But when we look at quantitative research methodology, we actually take a very diametrically opposite perspective, and here we have to be more precise. We have to actually generate data which is reliable, authentic, and importance of results is determined by statistical tests of significance, and we use testing of hypothesis, and we also validate theories. And there is also a very good way to actually look at the significance of these stories, because they facilitate replication of studies almost in toto in different and in other sets of population to confirm results of previous studies. And quantitative research also provides for generalization of findings to population. So, a lot of mass media industry depends on quantitative research to understand their audiences and tailor their content to suit audience needs. And this has also come about through different kinds of theories that we have had in the past, which have confirmed that quantitative studies help us to firm up our understanding of the role or the importance that media plays in our lives, which is uses and gratification theory. We have agenda setting theory, again which I mentioned about cultivation and media dependency theories. Government organizations also use quantitative approach in assessing their policies and programs in diverse areas of governance. A different approach which is called mixed methods research approach, which uses both qualitative as well as quantitative, a combination of both the methods. And in mixed method approach, data is collected through qualitative, such as observation, interviews, as we mentioned that what comes under qualitative. For example, a very good example would be a content analysis of political advertisements and trying to understand the perceptions of students on political advertisements in elections. So, it is actually differentiated in terms of pure and applied research. Let us look at it little more in detail. What do we mean by pure and applied research? So, basically, basic research is to fill in knowledge gaps, and applied research is to answer questions in real world and solve a problem. So, pure and basic research is guided by interest and curiosity to know and understand a phenomena, and this generates new or adds to the existing knowledge. And pure research is exploratory in nature, as it explores phenomena for a holistic understanding. But it is not aimed at solving a problem of immediate interest, but simultaneously it does provide essentials for applied research. But on the other hand, applied research comprises of a very different perspective. It is aimed at solving practical problems rather than just acquiring new knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And it is of great value to mass media, both traditional as well as new media, because it helps you to tailor programs and their acceptance to meet the user's needs and interests. For example, we have had an example of one of the Hindi newspapers, Dainik Bhaskar, conducted a need assessment survey before launching its new edition in 2 states, and based on the results of the survey design, its editions were different changes were brought about in the content and the format, the layout, and it met with an encouraging success. Now, let us look at the study purpose and the design. And from the perspective of study purpose, we must discuss about 4 types of research. One is exploratory research, second is descriptive, third is correlation, and fourth is explanatory research. Now, let us look at each one of them one by one. Now, by the name itself, exploratory research, which actually means that it takes up any research problem not fully investigated earlier for a very comprehensive understanding. And such research has potential to improve researchers' knowledge base and give direction for the conduct of subsequent or more conclusive studies. Exploratory research or feasibility studies follow basically a qualitative approach, though the quantitative approach is also used. Now, quantitative data measurement tools and techniques are equally suitable in this form of study. The only limitation of this exploratory research study is that findings would be of very limited in nature, just indicative, and cannot be generalized to wider set of groups in a population. Now, let us look at descriptive research. The name itself suggests that this actually tries to describe, it tends to answer what, who and where question of a topic under investigation. So, descriptive research identifies the variables of a phenomena and indicates the possible relationship between these variables. And description being its primary objective, it does not attempt to make predictions and determine cause and effect relations. It uses both types of methodology, qualitative as well as quantitative, and in fact it can also look at both in terms of a mixed method approach, and this is more in terms of describing different parts of a phenomena. Now, the third is a correlation research, is a non-experimental research method. The researcher measures two variables and understands and assesses the statistical relationship between them with no influence from any extraneous variable. When the correlation coefficient is close to +1, then there is a positive relationship between two variables, and if the value is close to -1, then there is a negative correlation between the two, and if the value is close to 0, then there is no relationship between the two variables. The last one in the list is explanatory research. The objective of explanatory research is to explain a phenomena, and here we are asking and addressing a question why, which we didn't ask in a descriptive research. There we actually limited ourselves to what, but here we are saying when you describe a phenomena, the next best question to ask is why is it so? So explanatory research actually provides you reasons or causes in terms of causal relationship. Causal relationship is examined through experiments in which researchers can manipulate one independent variable while exercising control on the rest of the variables. And results of experiments help in explaining phenomena comprehensively. And one example can be exposure to pro-social messages. If people are exposed to more pro-social messages, it can result in active and support to civic action among viewers of such messages on a consistent basis. Now, I can just cite some of the research studies just as some way to direct you what kind of studies can be taken up, either which are limited to a particular region, or it can be to a particular setting which is close to you, so that you can actually begin. For example, reach and impact of public service campaigns. Another is behavioral dimensions, which is to study that what happens to people, why people tend to be resistant to change, and this is a good way to understand the behavioral dimensions of any communication process. Third is the news and media coverage and the public sphere. Then we can also look at the communication policies, because regulation is a very important factor in trying to understand why media is vibrant in our country, why media gets a little limited in its scope to undertake very investigative reporting. And last is about communication and media advocacy, which is like climate change and scientific development. Now we are coming to the last unit, or the third unit, which talks about other types of research. Thank you very much.